Hello everyone, I cordially welcome you all to this video. In today's video, we are going to discuss how we can use CSS with React. So without any delay, let's get started. So before we discuss about how we can use CSS with React, let's revise what is CSS and in how many ways we can write CSS to make our applications look beautiful. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. It is a style sheet language that depicts how our HTML elements should look and feel like on the browser. It enhances the default HTML elements and gives a good user experience. In the light of application development, CSS is used in conjugation with HTML and JavaScript to create interactive and user-friendly web applications. Okay? CSS can be written in three ways along with HTML. They are as follows: Inline CSS, Internal CSS, and External CSS. Let's discuss each one of them one by one. Inline CSS. CSS allows us to design a single element within a HTML page. We can implement it using the style attribute. This method of writing CSS is not preferred as it leads to redundant code, decreased code reusability, and very hard to maintain in the long run. Internal CSS. CSS also allows us to write CSS within the same HTML file. This can be done by writing CSS within the style tag, which can be within the head tag of the HTML. Though this is specifically useful when we write CSS for a component, but it also reduces code reusability as we can't share the same style across similar components. We need to write redundant code in that case. The last but not the least is External CSS. We can create separate style sheet files with extensions of .css. Thereafter, we can link this file to our HTML component using the link tag within the head of our HTML file. This is the best way to write CSS because by changing few lines of CSS code, we can change the look and feel of the entire application. Okay? So basically in the first part of today's video, we have discussed what is CSS, how CSS is beneficial, and the three different ways by which we can write CSS. And those three different ways are Inline CSS, Internal CSS, and External CSS. Now the most popular of them is External CSS, and there are some reasons for it. If you only use Inline CSS in your application, that will reduce your code quality. You have to write redundant code, and what it will make is, in the long run, it will be a hectic task to maintain that application. Okay? If you write Internal CSS, what will happen? Your HTML and CSS will exist in the same .html file, and that is also very much dingy, as when the code will grow and you might have to add more components, in that case you will have to write redundant code. And as we all know, writing redundant code is not a good choice. The most popular way is External CSS. Basically there we have a separate HTML file which is the skeleton of our web application and a separate style sheet file with the extension .css. And the best reason to have a separate CSS file, because if you change few lines of code there, you can change the look and feel of the entire application altogether. Okay? I hope this is pretty easy for you if you have some knowledge of web development. So now let's proceed ahead. Now we come to our main topic, React with CSS. When it comes to styling a React application, there are multiple options available, which includes Inline CSS, Internal CSS, External CSS, CSS modules, CSS framework, and CSS preprocessors. For the scope of this video, we are going to discuss on Inline, Internal, and External CSS with React. React with Inline CSS. Inline CSS comes handy when styling individual elements, be it HTML or React's JSX. Inline CSS provides quick tuning of React components, which are small and the entire project size is not so huge. CSS written inline also has higher precedence than the external one. But it is to be noted, writing inline CSS is not recommendable, as with increase in project size, maintaining inline CSS gets pretty hard. One thing to notice, for CSS properties which are more than one word, React uses camel case convention. For text align in CSS, it is written like text align in camel case. As we have three different ways of writing CSS in HTML, those three ways also exist with React. For the first, we have discussed about writing inline CSS. As I have already told, this is not the recommendable way, and even if you write that way, you have to remember few things. Whenever you write CSS in any form or shape with React, the CSS properties which have more than two words and which uses hyphen in the middle, those all type of properties are written in camel case. That is, text hyphen align becomes text align in camel case. I have also attached a code sample below, you can check it out. Within div style, we have padding 20 pixel, color red and text align center. Now see the text align, T is small, A is capital. That is our camel case convention. Okay, let's proceed. React with internal CSS. In React, one other major way of writing CSS is to assign styles into reusable variables declared with const keyword, which might exist in the same or different file with respect to the component's JSX or TSX code. An example is given below. Const styles equal to within a pair of braces header and within a pair of braces font size 20 pixel. Now we define our div tag with style equal to within pair of braces styles.header. Okay. But there are some major flaws which are associated with both of the types, that is inline and internal. Some of the major flaws are given below. Increase redundant code in the application. Too much CSS in the same file reduces code readability. Doesn't scale when the application size increases. Animations and selectors don't work well with inline and internal CSS. Very tough to maintain. Okay. So these are the reasons why it is always recommendable not to use inline and internal CSS with React. I hope by now it is clear with you that why we don't use internal and inline CSS with React. Okay, let's proceed ahead and learn about external CSS with React. The most common and efficient way of writing CSS for application is using external CSS files. This is not only increases code reusability but also helps to scale. Like for an example, when we can create some common CSS files to provide the theme of the application and can have private CSS files to design the individual components specifically. We can implement it by creating a separate CSS file with .css extension and include it within our component using import statement. An example to import the style.css within our app.tsx is given below. Import .style.css. Now here in this case, I am assuming your app.tsx and style.css are in the same hierarchy. Okay. So external CSS is the mandate when you use React in your web application. The reason is you can separate two types of CSS files, one for designing and theming and one CSS files for each page of your React application. This not only gives you a solid control over your application, but you can separate each time if your component page is changing or a simple component is changing or the entire theme of your application changes. Okay, that's why always use external CSS with React. Let's proceed. Few important things to remember. This is not the end here. We can also use CSS modules, CSS preprocessors and CSS frameworks, which not only boost the speed of the application development but also provide the rich development experience. The CSS preprocessors give some powerful tools which generally don't exist in plain CSS. It basically provides a more scripting or programming-like approach by using variables, inheritance, nesting, and inbuilt tools to write responsive code. On the other hand, the CSS modules can also be utilized with React. One of the great features it provides is its compatibility with both plain CSS and CSS preprocessors. For faster application development, we can also use CSS frameworks. These are basically pre-written CSS files which contain inbuilt themes, utilities, components, etc. to develop our application. So basically here some people find one thing a bit confusing. What is the difference between CSS preprocessors and CSS framework? So basically CSS preprocessors, as the name says, they are not direct CSS files. You can write CSS within the preprocessors, and it gives you more powerful things like variable declaration, inheritance, nesting, this kind of things to write CSS faster, which actually thereafter gets compiled to generate CSS files. The major examples are SAS or SCSS and less. Those are the CSS preprocessors which are mostly used everywhere. If you write CSS programmatically there, those CSS gets compiled and generates your .css files, okay? But in the other hand, CSS frameworks are pre-written CSS files which exist in the form of a library. You download it from npm. It not only provides you with themes, utilities, components, but also helps you to manipulate existing components using the layouts provided. Okay, let's proceed. I hope you found this video informative. In case you like it, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We are going to bring more videos in future. For any queries, doubts, suggestions or feedbacks, feel free to post them in the comment section. We are going to reply. So thank you for now. See you in the next video. Bye.